Good morning and welcome to this special interview segment. I'm joined on set with Maria Wainscott, who is a Notre Dame first year and a recording artist here at Notre Dame. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's so cool. At Notre Dame, we have so many talented people, so it's such an opportunity to be able to sit down with one of them, and it just gives us a reminder that there's so much talent here on this campus, and one of those people that brings talent here is Maria. Let's start from a Notre Dame perspective. What's the Notre Dame intro you tell everybody?
Well, here at Notre Dame, I'm studying pre-law and American Studies, but really what I like to bring to the table as well is my love for the arts. So I'm a recording artist from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I really like to integrate that into everything that I do here. So kind of bringing the creative into everything analytical and legal that I do here is really important to me to become the full, well-rounded, dynamic student here.
So pre-law, I heard that. I might dig a little bit more into that later.
Indeed.
So stay tuned. But tell me a little bit now about your recording artist experience. How did you get involved in music, and how has it brought you to where you are today?
Sure thing. So my mom was a professional dancer on Broadway, but how we like to say it in my family is she didn't have the vocal capabilities. So what we like to joke about a lot is we're not really quite sure where hers were, but they came out in me. So I kind of compensate for that. So I was always introduced to the arts at a young age. I was dancing from a really young age competitively, and then I also dabbled in music theater. But I think what we came to find was where my heart really was in music and in dance and in musical theater was the musicality aspect. So finding rhythms and singing was really where my love for music shined. And my parents recognized that at a really young age, and how I ended up really getting involved in the music industry was actually for Christmas, my parents decided to purchase me some recording studio time at a professional recording studio, and I ended up recording some cover songs. Those ended up getting picked up by a studio in Broadway that wanted to look for some talent that would potentially open for some gigs in Staten Island that year, and the year was 2014.
2014?
Yeah, so I was very, very young when I started, and then I ended up signing my first gig opening for the Phantom of the Opera at a pretty young age, and then from there everything just took off. So I started working with a production agency that kind of helped me along the way to get involved in some opportunities, basic songwriting at a really young age. And then from there, I really just blossomed into the songwriter, producer, singer that I am today. So that's really how I got started in terms of basic networking, etc.
Yeah, so back when I was playing B-team basketball, you were out here performing on Broadway or Staten Island. And, oh man, that's crazy.
It was very, very fun. I think it really introduced me to professionalism at a young age. I always knew that I wanted to be involved in the music industry. At what capacity, I wasn't necessarily sure of at the time, but I knew that I wanted to be singing, and I knew that it was going to have a lasting impact on my life forever. So
yeah, wow. Starting at a really young age, and now studying pre-law. I know we've talked a little bit about how the industry is so competitive.
Absolutely.
And you prioritize both school and music a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about how you balance the Notre Dame student experience, which we all know is terribly demanding, with being a rising recording artist, which is also terribly demanding.
For sure. I think all of my success goes back to my family and my support system. I think coupled with the family side of my support system, I'm currently signed to a label called Music Mastery. They're wonderful. My manager's name is Lisa Einhorn, and she basically dictates all of my meetings for the week, collaborations with songwriters, studio times, all that fun stuff. And then my executive producer, Charlie Walk, he will also help in organizing everything. And he basically is big picture man. So he looks at the final release date, how do we get there? And he also is wonderful with networking. So I would say to anyone who's involved in the music industry or looking to get involved in the music industry, who you know is incredibly important. Charlie knows all the right people, and so working with an executive producer who can help me get to where I need to be is most important. So I would say those two people, coupled with my family, my parents especially, providing me with support at all times is crucial to my success as both a recording artist and as a student here. And I would also just love to say that Notre Dame has been incredibly supportive in letting me use their recording facilities, their music facilities for all of my needs here as well. So it comes at the expense of a little bit of sacrifice in terms of how much time being a student here at Notre Dame really requires, and then also being a musical artist who has to collaborate with artists and producers across the country in different time zones. You really don't think about all of those components, but that's what you're dealing with when you are an artist where the industry's heart is really not in South Bend, not in the Midwest at all.
No, wait, really?
Really. It's really hard to coordinate with these big executive heads that are really based in New York City and in Los Angeles, California. But honestly, with the coronavirus, it's really taught me a lot on how I can really make it work. We've done everything virtually, but tuning into important meetings via Zoom has actually been doable, and we've had to make it work with COVID-19.
Wow. I'd love to hear more about that, but before we cut the interview short for our Sunrise viewers, which, by the way, you can see the full interview on YouTube if you're only watching this during our morning sunrise. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about what's on the way for Maria Wainscott. What do you have out right now? Where can people find you? And what should we expect in the coming months?
Awesome. Well, currently I have a single out called Moved by the Feeling.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Thank you. It is an electronic song. It was made for festival and club settings. That was my first release, and it was a really wonderful experience. I'm currently on Spotify and Apple Music, Amazon as well, so you can find me anywhere, and my artist name is my name, which is helpful. Also, what's coming up on the way are much more rhythmic pop songs. So I've collaborated with some really amazing artists to produce lots of content that will hopefully begin to release a little before the summer. And I think it should be really exciting. My executive producer always shares with me that an artist is a brand and a brand is a promise. And what is your promise? So I always like to tell people that my brand and promise is my authenticity. So I really, really like to communicate through all of my music just really important messages regarding just self-worth, and I think that all of those come through in all of these songs. So yeah, it's getting really excited as we're getting closer to the release date, but lots of music on the way for sure.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to Moved by the Feeling, then totally go out there, look it up. It's on Spotify, Apple Music,
Absolutely.
wherever you get your music, it'll be there, and listen to it. We play it in the studio all the time because it bops. And
it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah.
It's definitely fun to hear myself.
Make sure to follow Maria so that you can stay up to date with everything else that she has coming out. And we're going to take a short break. If you're watching this on ND Sunrise, make sure to head over to the YouTube channel so you can see the full interview. But we'll be back in just a second. All right, welcome back into the studio. I'm joined alongside Maria Wainscott, and we're here to continue our interview talking about, wow, that really sucked as an intro. Let me try that again. welcome back into the studio to continue our interview with Maria Wainscott. Thank you again for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And just before we left, we were talking about your brand, your promise, and you mentioned that your promise is bringing authenticity to the music you produce.
Absolutely.
So can you elaborate a little more on that? What does that look like in the songwriting process, or what are some of the things that you try to bring to your music to make you unique?
For sure. I really enjoy collaborating when it comes to songwriting, but I think something really interesting that comes out of all of my songs is that there is some truth in all of them. So I'm not creating something that is untrue or something that I've never experienced before. There's always little pieces of my experience in my songs. So I really like to execute obviously content that's relatable, but things that are really unique to me. And then also where I like to talk about authenticity is in the production and songwriting process. So in terms of what I like to reveal in my music, I like to produce it well. So the quality of the music that we're doing, I'm bringing in real instrument players. We're not using everything that is automated. We don't use a lot of auto-tune. Basically, the people that I'm working with are really, really incredible artists who really appreciate the artistry of music. I really like to surround myself with wonderful just collaborators, and my executive producer and manager are also wonderful people. So what we like to talk about is just being a role model through music, just communicating really positive messages. I think a lot of people can turn on the radio and probably synthesize from a few songs that mostly everything that is sung about on the radio probably deals with a breakup or some form of love. But I think what really needs to be highlighted is just this idea of self-worth and always just being resilient, being proud of who you are. That's really what I like to execute in a lot of my songs. I think being vulnerable is really, really amazing, and there is a lot of strength in vulnerability, and that's what I like to reveal in terms of a message through my music. But also on the production side of things, in terms of who I'm involving and how we produce the music, it's all really wonderful. And I spoke a little bit about how we've been able to actually execute that via Zoom with making everything virtual, but we've still been able to bring in like real musicians to collaborate on my music. So it's been a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, so authentic messaging, authentic instruments. So what we're actually hearing is almost music in its purest form, which is as it's played by talented and skilled musicians. And yeah, that's definitely been a challenge during the pandemic where people aren't traveling as much and you can't meet in person. And that's not something I was going to ask about just because we hear that so much, but after hearing you talk about it, then it sounds really intriguing how you're able to collaborate with so many different people in order to produce music when you haven't even met some of those folks in person.
Right.
How is that possible?
So I began working with this new label last summer, and everyone knows that coronavirus has now been around that long. So I haven't actually met a lot of the common songwriters that I work with, or even some of the producers that I work with in person due to the coronavirus. So that's been very strange, but what it's told me is that it's all doable. We could really make it work. I think a really, really interesting example of this is when I'm in the studio physically. I'm not with the producers that I'm working with. So all of the producers that I typically write with live in Los Angeles, California. And flying out from Los Angeles right now to where I am in Cincinnati, Ohio is pretty difficult. So what we'll end up doing when we're recording music is I will have a sound engineer with me in person in the studio where I am, and they will basically be there to do the basic recording procedures, hitting record, hitting pause, hitting the playback button, all of those important things. But my producers, my manager, they will all tune in to my headphone set via this software called Audio Movers, and they'll be able to coach me through the process of singing everything the way that they want to hear it. So it is pretty revolutionary, the technology that we have now encountered due to coronavirus, but once again, we're able to do it. It's really fascinating, and I've been able to form really incredible relationships still with my producers, songwriters, collaborators, even though the pandemic has really, stunted some musical creation. But we've been able to create some really incredible content, and we've created 10 songs over the past year, let's say, a little under a year. But it's all been virtual, and just some of these really cool adaptations to kind of the situation we've been in have been like this example, just them tuning in, coaching me, and producing some really incredible content.
Wow. So you have producers who, are on the coast.
Right.
You're here in South Bend.
Yep.
And you're literally hearing them in your headphones as you're recording.
Exactly.
That's crazy. Oh, man. What we can do with technology.
Exactly.
Oh, my gosh. But yeah, 10 songs on the way, a little different than what you have out right now.
Absolutely.
Do you know when we can expect to start seeing these? I'm ready.
Yeah, no, that's a great
fan.
question. We definitely wanted to target these releases for sometime in the summer, hopefully a little bit before then, but like I said, managing schoolwork, and my brother is graduating from Notre Dame this year.
Okay.
Yeah, we will definitely have some music coming out, but those are also my priorities. School, family, relaxing a little bit this summer, but definitely getting that music out pretty soon for the summer is definitely a priority of mine. It's going to be really fun, really exciting, and I'm very excited for everyone to hear what I have.
Yeah, good priorities for sure. You can't knock any of those. But you talked a little bit about how you got involved in music and the process, of course, the virtual process now,
Right.
but the process that you go about creating things and collaborating with others. What is some of your inspiration that you bring to the table? When you were younger, who were you listening to?
Yeah.
Or who are you listening to now that inspires you and brings elements of maybe authenticity or specific instrumentation into your music?
Great question.
Who are your inspirations?
Yeah, one of my female inspirations in terms of songwriting, her name's Julia Michaels. I'm not sure how many people are really familiar with her. She sings the song Issues. I'd say that's probably her biggest hit. She is actually a star that my executive producer, Charlie Walk, started. She's wonderful. She is incredibly authentic when it comes to talking about artistry. And she writes all of her own music, and she actually started as a songwriter for Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Demi Lovato, some really big names. And then Charlie found her, heard her on a demo, and said, "You should sing. You should be the artist on this song." So in terms of being the dynamic artist herself, I have always wanted to emulate that. I've always wanted to be my own producer, my own songwriter, my own vocalist on all of my music. And what's really cool about being the dynamic artist is even when I'm not singing, I'm succeeding as a musician. So I also always produce music. I always write music for other artists. If I finish a piece of work and I realize it's not for me, I have my own LLC. So I will put that music out there, and it is free to be purchased by someone else and published by someone else. So becoming really the whole artist is really important to me, the holistic artist, and I think Julia Michaels is a good role model for me in terms of that as well. So
Wow,
definitely an idol of mine. And then I would also say one of my favorite artists to listen to right now is Tame Impala. He's an Australian artist. He's really wonderful, and he produces every single part of his music. So every instrument is him. Every part of his music that's produced that you hear on the track is him. So I just love his stuff.
Wow, yeah. Talk about being a holistic artist,
Right.
producing literally everything on the track.
Exactly.
Wow, that's crazy. I've heard some Julia Michaels. Love it. Oh, man. But you talked about your executive producer a little bit, and you went through a label change recently,
Yes.
as you mentioned, over the summer.
I did.
Tell me a little bit more about how that process was like, or why you wanted to switch labels when you're so young, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So when I was really young, I got involved with a label that was a little bit more controlling, I think might be the word. I didn't have as much freedom of expression in terms of the color of my hair or what I would sing about, or really the schedule of when I had to be present. The label was based out of Nashville, and so I was being torn between my family in Cincinnati and my work in Nashville, Tennessee, and that was really hard on me as a young high schooler. So what I really decided to do was look around, and as an athlete does, you can also become a free agent in terms of an independent music artist. And so I kind of did that. I took a step away from this very demanding environment, and I wanted to look elsewhere. So I really think that my faith played a huge part in the new label that I'm with. And I think that it all fell into place for me. So Music Mastery and Charlie Walk, the founder of Music Mastery, it's really been a huge blessing in my life. And he told me something that no one else had ever told me before, that I could do school and music. And that's really important to me because, like I mentioned, I'm really interested in maybe going to law school, maybe becoming an entertainment law attorney, protecting artist rights, artists like me. That's really been important to me. People who have served in that role for me in the past, maybe I would want to do that. But perhaps maybe the music thing will really work out. And it's really been successful for me lately. So having this dynamic support system, being able to do both was really what pulled me to move and sign with Music Mastery as an artist for them. So they've really embraced me as I am, as the dynamic person who loves school. I love Notre Dame as much as I love my music. And so that process has been really gratifying, and they've embraced me as the person I am. So it's been a wonderful partnership, and yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. It's amazing to hear that you're working with a label that embraces you as you are and all of your diverse interests. And that's crazy to hear that there's labels out there telling people, like, if you want to pursue music, then you can't pursue school. At least you can't pursue school right now. And
Exactly.
It's great to hear that there's people out there that recognize, you're a young adult and you need to have many different opportunities ahead of you.
Right.
And you have different interests and allows you to follow those. So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me for the interview today. I really appreciate your time, and it's been great to hear more about what it's like to be a student at Notre Dame as well as a recording artist.
Absolutely.
And get a little insight to an industry that we don't really know very well. It's easy for us to turn on Spotify and listen to some music, but
Definitely.
It's great to hear a perspective from the people who are actually making the tracks that we listen to. And I really wish you success in your future. I love what you have out right now, and I can't wait to hear what's coming out over the summer. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, but I predict success in your future. So you can take my prediction with a grain of salt. But
I will.
Is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers before we close? All right.
I don't think so, but thanks for joining us today. I think it's been really fun for me to just talk to you about the realities of being both a recording artist and a student here, and you can do it all. So.
Yeah, thank you. So remember, go follow Maria wherever she's at. Just search Maria Wainscott and you'll find her, and stay tuned for what's coming over the summer. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Maria, for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day, of course.